All right, cool. So, Jerry, thanks for joining today. I'm looking forward to asking you a few questions. Poking at some of your interests and then what makes you unique and yeah. So, thanks for taking the time to kind of shoot the shit with me for a bit here.
No problem, no problem. Happy to do it.
Cool. So, so yeah. First of all, Jerry, if you can just give us a bit of background into your education and but more than your education, kind of just how you ended up in the space and just that good stuff.
Cool. I basically graduated in 2013 from my master. And fortunately, it was after I graduated I found out about Bitcoin. So not much to tie in with that one. I graduated with Bachelor of Science in Biology. So with Bitcoin, really, it was just me surfing on Reddit. First time I heard it, I think it was mid 2013. I think that
Wow.
was when Cyprus, yeah, it was the Cyprus government doing the bail-in with the banks and all that stuff. So didn't really pay too much attention to it. Just kind of figured it was like an economic movement. But then in I think it was September or October, heard Bitcoin again on Reddit. This time it was FBI seizing 30,000 Bitcoins or so, and then the price dropped by a third. So after that, I decided to get in, figured out how to buy it with PayPal through very, very obscure ways. Wouldn't recommend it to anyone, but yeah, you live, you learn.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yeah, just afterwards, lost some money, well, pretty much all the money to Mt. Gox, but ended up participating a lot with the meetups space here in Toronto. And yeah, that's basically how I got started.
Well, that's incredible because I mean, you know what? I mean, what I heard is 2013. So, I mean, by the standards of the ecosystem and crypto, I mean, you were pretty early, in the game, kind of. So I guess you have some skin in the game. So I mean, we're in 2020, and I mean, we're right here during COVID, which is pretty nuts. I'm kind of happy that you're talking to me because there's not much to do around the house. But all jokes aside, what's like what drives you to stay in the space, and what's kept you in the space? Since you mentioned 2013, right? And we're 2020.
Yeah, so I think a lot of it really uh, can't go out without mentioning the pink elephant in the room, which is the skyrocketing prices, right? But beside that, I think the price rises that we saw in 2017 or so really helped bring in people to just try to better understand the technology. And like you said, I'm like fairly old in the space, but when I got into space, there was already quite a few highly technical people, and it's kind of like, okay, so what's happening? What's going on? So I mean, in that aspect, I think there's a lot of just passing on the knowledge, as well as just like helping out other people and other companies
Yeah.
into actually just understanding what this technology is doing, rather than like spending hundreds of thousands of dollars or millions of dollars on projects where with a bit of better foresight they could have done much more with it, right?
Totally. So yeah, you're talking. So I guess you're a bit of a risk taker, and volatility is kind of something that draws you in, right? So being, I mean, the ultimate disruptor. That I mean that I've presence. I mean that I've witnessed being COVID. I mean, COVID is a pretty crazy phenomena. Every day is kind of uncertain. We're not sure how we're going to end up, where we're going to end up, how things are going to be, how this is going to affect us psychologically or with our purchasing behaviors. How do you see crypto and blockchain? How do you see it being influenced by this? Do you see it as a negative? Do you see it making blockchain and crypto stronger? How do you feel about like this whole pandemic and in relation to crypto and blockchain?
Well, not much to technology, unfortunately, because the technology is kind of independent against all this. But I think with a lot of people's approach to crypto and blockchain. At least their perspectives may change. So what I mean by that is, say, for example, you're holding on to a lot of Bitcoin, but then all of a sudden, with the pandemic, all of these companies start shutting down. And even if you're able to convert that into dollars, well, we're all seeing, some of the critical supply chains shut down too, right?
Oh yeah.
So in that aspect, there's an aspect in the blockchain, the Bitcoin blockchain space called HODL, and obviously, like when you're quote unquote hodling, there's not much circulation of the currency going around, which
Yeah.
also means there's not much economic activity, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, it's nice that everyone's like counting their dollars and whatnot in crypto, but I think hopefully this would drive a bigger shift to actually using the crypto in some sort of real life fashion.
Totally. Yeah, totally. I mean, you're right. I guess that's a good way to look at it. The tech is not necessarily might not be influenced by the psychology of what's going on. So that's cool. Now, something that does. I know something you enjoy is gaming, right? And I know, early on, I was reading some papers about how blockchain and the tech can really impact this ecosystem, right? What are your thoughts, right? How do you see that? How do you see that happening? And knowing that I think it's StarCraft that you're pretty badass at. I heard. How do you see the gaming and blockchain space coming together and kind of existing?
Um, so I think in terms of gaming, it's really specific to competitive gaming. And so what I mean by that is like you can think like some of the newer games out there, right? Like the newest one, Final Fantasy VII remake. It's like what kind of information do you need to store on the blockchain that you need other people to know, right?
Hmm.
There's not that much. So it's really like game specific. For example, if you have like a game license and the game manufacturer, producer, or whatnot wants to track who are the legit players and who are just pirating the games, then yeah, that could work, right? So I mean, in terms of like just competitive gaming, there's lots, right? Like organizing tournaments, making sure the payouts go out properly, gambling, of course, having
Yeah.
side bets. Even just like platforms on, let's say, Twitch or YouTube Live, right, where they have live stream platforms and their viewers can actually just donate or tip or do whatever, like give money to those streamers. So there's a lot of like those kinds of aspects.
Yeah. Yeah.
But definitely, I think currently, right now, for a lot of the smaller, let's say, tournaments, it's very, very cumbersome to actually organize them, just bad. So even if it's like a $50 tournament or $100 tournament, right? The transaction fees to send out and all logistics. Are the organizers paying out correctly? Are they just holding onto the money themselves? Right. There's been incidences where even teams, after they win, the team manager just holds on all the money and quote unquote pays the cost. Right.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of like these cases where definitely like if you're talking about payouts, more financial impacts, these players are essentially dedicating their life to it, then yeah, I can see a lot more use cases.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Good to know. Hey, and so talking about so I was just thinking. I know you're working on some stuff right now. What are you working on right now? What are some exciting projects that you can share with me that you're working on right now, or that you've touched on in perhaps the last few years?
So currently we're working a lot with the Bitcoin Cash ecosystem. We've been working with a scripting language in Bitcoin Cash that should technically work for all Bitcoin derivatives using the same opcodes. And essentially, we're creating a smart contract like environment. So not exactly fully automated, but pretty much good enough.
Yeah.
And we're integrating it into a mobile wallet that actually manages a lot of the on-chain tokens on the Bitcoin Cash network, the SLB tokens. And so we've integrated in such a manner that essentially these contract addresses are able to manage all that, plus do a whole bunch of just user customization, so
Cool.
that effectively users can define, or at least in the end goal, they'll be able to define how they want to basically unlock their addresses.
That's awesome. It's awesome. What's kind of odd is being in the space for a while and knowing the benefits and advantages of it, but having mainstream not there yet, caught up, right? And then when we're talking about mainstream, and I mean we're in Toronto, and Toronto's pretty. I mean, I can say I don't know if we're at the forefront, but we're quite up there when it comes to AI, emerging tech, and blockchain. What do you think it is about Toronto that that's becoming such an exciting place for the tech ecosystem?
Well, I'm not sure if it's a model that every single city wants to follow,
Yeah,
because Toronto, quite honestly, has quite a bit of background. Let's just say. Obviously, if you've ever been to downtown Toronto and just checked out what kind of jobs are available, it's either going to be the low end hourly wages, like whatever the restaurants, or it's going to be the high end banking institutions, right? And it's only been like, I guess in the past 10, 15 years or so that we started seeing the shift, maybe even less, where all of a sudden a lot of these smaller businesses just kind of left, backed out, moved out. And then you just have free real estate that the large businesses didn't want to take up. And it was prime for startups, really. That added on top with, Silicon Valley, Waterloo, all the talent that's here,
yeah.
and the fact that salary wise, it's fairly competitive compared to places in the States or places in Europe. A lot of things just come together, right? Now, of course, like it's not entirely planned that way. You have a lot of like lost businesses along the way too, right? So that's what I'm saying. Not necessarily a model to follow for everyone,
Yeah, yeah.
but it's kind of like making the best of a bad situation.
Cool. Yeah, you know what? Yeah, and you're right. I mean, sometimes it's not about. I mean, it's really hard to forecast nowadays with so much complexity, and but yeah, sometimes I guess things do come together, and then there's that synergy there along with the talent. And so, hey, talking about talent, I mean, you've done quite a few things. I mean, you're pretty accomplished. And you've kind of earned your stripes, right? Like you've earned your veteran stripes, in the space. What would you say to like the young folks, the young aspiring, uh, you know, tech tech guns that are coming up? What advice would you have, for them, right? How if you can go back, what advice would you give yourself? I guess, right?
Um, yeah, see, there's a lot of different influences, and it also depends on kind of like the geographic area that you're dealing with, right? The reason why I say that is, it take place like Ontario. Um, we have lots of projects, and we have lots of people that want projects related with tokens, but due to the current regulations here, it's very very hard to actually do anything about that. Now, if you go to a place like Singapore or Switzerland, very very typical places,
Yeah.
that culture is very very different, right? So how you actually deal with it will also be different.
So you mean,
So
is
I
it
guess
like there's
like
more
my best
regulation,
advice.
or sorry, you're
Well,
saying?
it's just different kind of like environments and ecosystems, right? Where like they may have a lot of like one area, like let's say financial investments,
Yeah.
but maybe lacking other ones, like maybe tech or maybe whatever, something else. So my best advice, quite honestly, would be to just try to diversify as much as you can with what you know about blockchain, right? Like don't just focus on the tech, or don't just focus on the trading aspect, right? Try to tip your toe in a little bit of everything.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I mean, that totally makes sense. I mean, especially me, being a creative, I know that that totally hits a nerve. because sometimes becoming highly specialized, you're very fragile, I guess, and you can end up kind of taking yourself out of the market. So totally. And what do you think? What kind of skill sets do you think somebody needs to have to be successful in the space, in the tech space? Like if you're just deciding, right? If you're a guy that you're a person that's trying to you're a young guy that's trying to decide what you want to do, and maybe you're good at, maybe you have good personable skills, but you're also great at kind of, you're curious, you like to take things apart and build them up. Like what would you say are the some of the things that might be required for you to be successful in the space, in the tech space specifically?
Well, I would say for tech space and blockchain in particular, because everything's so mobile and dynamic,
Yeah.
what people learn like year and a half ago, 2 years ago, would easily be outdated by now. So
Yeah.
really the number one most important skill I would say is kind of like a very focused dedication on just self improvement, right? Not not taking the assumption that yeah, you've been in the space for a long time, you
Yeah.
know quite a lot, and that's it, right? That's it. That's that. Have a good day, everyone. Like that can't be the attitude, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it can't be like, oh yeah, you've been in the space for a long time, therefore everyone automatically goes to you for whatever source of advice. Well, by that time comes, maybe 2, 3, 4 years down the road. So what? Everyone else knows it, right?
Yeah.
So it's about constantly moving, constantly making sure you're on somewhat of a cutting edge one. Not the most cutting edge, I would say, because that takes a lot of dedication and a lot of your time.
Yeah.
But you know, try to keep up and be
Which
humble.
so which languages are you betting on? Which like how you said there's the whole array of toolkits that you can learn. Which are the ones that you find are good to put your time into personally? Just maybe a few.
Yeah, so for me personally, I'm more trying to understand the projects on a more macroscopic scale. So for me, it's more about understanding components of each program section or module, right? So obviously, you need to have like some general idea of how these servers work, some idea of how to present it to the front end, and some generic idea of like how databases and all these connectivities work, right? To the ends of like how much specialization or specification you need for those knowledge, it really depends on what do you need the knowledge for, right? Do you need it for blockchain? Do you need it for AI? Do you need it for what else?
Yeah.
And potentially there could be like some cross pollination that you just didn't foresee before, right? And just come out from one of these things like, oh, I could apply these things together in a new way that people just didn't think about.
Gotcha. Yeah. So it's not kind of focusing on one specific thing, but being highly adaptable, being able to kind of see into what might be needed, adapting and tinkering, I guess, is what I get from it. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if you like, I'll give you a better example, right? So if you take a look at like what Bitcoin is or Bitcoin originally was when it was released, it's essentially just a database storing all the blocks and then a server or a client, whatnot, doing the processing, right? Doing all the new processing, getting all the calculations and whatnot.
Yeah.
And then there's the final networking portion. So when people talk about blockchain, that's really what it's broken down to. Now, of course, there is also the mining and the economic factor into it. So
Yeah.
it's very, very multidisciplinary, right? So, like to say like there's a blockchain, discipline or focus or whatnot, it's to kind of like miss the point, right? Blockchain itself is made up of a lot of its individual module components.
Yeah.
So when people are designing blockchains but cutting out, let's say, the economic factor, that basically just changes the entire dynamic or the entire equation of the system, right? So yeah, like try to understand things from a more macroscopic scale.
Gotcha. Gotcha. No, that's awesome, man. And I guess yeah, if you can focus on and I guess having a team that understands different aspects, that's what I get from you as well. Being able to surround yourself with people that are highly collaborative and able to contribute different skill sets helps you to build the whole thing. Because I can imagine, yeah, it's totally multidisciplinary. That's awesome, Jerry. You know what? That's amazing. And and if people want to get in touch with you, if I know you're obviously on different mediums, but what's the best way to get in touch with you? And or is it through Bitcoin Bay? What are your channels? What's the best way for people to get at you? You know, and to just reach out to you.
Yeah, I'm on several different platforms. Mostly use LinkedIn, so you could just search me up, Jerry Qian, Qian. Twitter. Most of my tags on social media will end up in Lightswarm. So at Lightswarm, LIGHTSWRM. And yeah, if you see any of those, it's probably my account because I haven't seen anyone else use it. And yeah, if anyone else wants to get in touch, happy to follow up.
Nice, nice, Jerry. Well, listen, thanks for taking the time. I that's some good info, good insight into kind of your background, what pushed you, what drove you, and we appreciate your honesty and just kind of kicking the convo for a bit. So yeah, that's cool. So thanks for the time, and yeah, I'll see you soon, man.
Cool. Cool.
Cool.